Welcome to The Explainer. So glad you're joining us today, because we are diving into something truly fascinating. We're going to learn how to read the history of New York City. And the crazy thing is, this history isn't written in a book somewhere, it's literally written in steel, stone, and glass all around us. We're going to look right past those classic postcard views and uncover the hidden logic that actually sculpted one of the most famous landscapes on Earth.
Okay, let's dive into this. We all instantly recognize the New York skyline, right? It's completely iconic. But have you ever stopped to actually ask yourself, why does it look exactly the way it does? Why does some buildings look like these giant tiered wedding cakes? Why are there all these wooden barrels sitting on top of million-dollar roofs? And why do you suddenly get these sleek glass boxes popping up right next to incredibly ornate stone towers?
Well, the answer might actually surprise you. Because the truth is, the shape of the city is not just about artistic expression, it's the law. Literally. What we're really looking at when we gaze up at that skyline is the direct, physical manifestation of specific historical crises, intense physical constraints, and highly specific zoning laws. Basically, every angle, every setback, it all tells the story of a city desperately trying to control its own explosive growth.
Which brings us to Section 1, Setting the Grid.
To understand the heights of the city, we actually have to start on the ground. Long before the skyscrapers, there was the grid. As Newark started expanding north from the southern tip of Manhattan, the 1811 Commissioner's Plan laid out this highly visionary and, frankly, incredibly rigid proposal. They mapped out 12 numbered avenues running north and south, intersected by exactly 155 orthogonal cross streets. And the underlying logic here was not about aesthetics at all. It was pure economic logic. The grid just provided a highly efficient, organized way to divide and develop real estate. It set the literal boundaries for how big a building's footprint could ever be.
Now, the number 6 is actually a really big deal here. Back in the 19th century, 6 was basically a magic number in New York architecture. As buildings started getting taller, the city mandated that any building higher than 6 stories had to install a wooden, roof-mounted water tower. Why? Well, it turns out the municipal water pipes down below simply could not withstand the extraordinarily high pressure needed to push water up to those top stories. The pipes would literally just burst. So those iconic wooden water towers you still see dotting the skyline today, they're a direct relic of early plumbing limitations. Pretty wild, right?
Moving on to Section 2, the 1916 Zoning Revolution.
So, as engineering got better and better, buildings absolutely skyrocketed. In 1915, they built the massive Equitable Building, and it rose vertically 40 stories straight up from the sidewalk. It was an absolute behemoth. The problem was, it effectively plunged the surrounding streets into permanent dark shadows. This actually sparked a citywide panic. People needed light and air. So the crucial point here is the 1916 zoning resolution. The city stepped in and mandated architectural setbacks. Now, a setback is just a step-like recession in a wall, one that progressively withdraws at a defined angle from the street as it goes up. This ensured that sunlight could actually reach the pedestrians down below. Plus, they restricted towers to taking up just 25% of the total lot size.
And this was a massive deal. It was the very first citywide zoning code in the United States, and its impact was monumental. The setback rules forced architects to get creative, which directly gave us that tiered Art Deco wedding cake style we know so well today. People like Hugh Ferris drew up visual studies that popularized these rules, showing everyone exactly how to maximize building mass under the new laws. It shaped massive local icons like the Empire State Building, and by the end of the 1920s, this totally New York-born setback style had caught on globally, spreading from Chicago all the way to Shanghai.
All right, Section 3, the race to the sky. With the rules of the game firmly established in the 20s, developers naturally turned their eyes upwards. New York City held the title of the world's tallest building for 75 continuous years. We can trace this dizzying vertical growth starting from the 309-foot New York World Building back in 1890, up to the spectacular Gothic architecture of the Woolworth Building in 1913. But the real frenzy hit right as the stock market was soaring just before the 1929 crash. Developers were out there publicly competing for the crown, and the title was changing hands incredibly fast.
And the drama during this time is just fantastic. Down at 40 Wall Street, developers finished a massive tower in 1930 that really seemed to secure the title. But auto executive Walter Chrysler and his architect William Van Allen had a very sneaky plan up their sleeves. They actually secretly constructed a 185-foot steel spire inside the Chrysler Building, and then literally hoisted it up to top the tower off at 1,046 feet. Just like that, it became the first structure in the world to surpass the 1,000-foot threshold. Of course, their glory was incredibly short-lived.
because literally just a year later, the Empire State Building smashed that record, rising to 1,250 feet in a mind-boggling construction time of just 14 months.
Which takes us to Section 4, Plazas and Preservation.
Moving into the mid-century, the architectural rules shifted dramatically once again. This ushered in the era of the international style and brought a total transformation to the street level. And this old transition brilliantly illustrates the shift. By 1961, the city had completely overhauled the zoning rules. Instead of focusing on setbacks, the new resolution introduced something called the Floor Area Ratio, or FAR. And here's the big twist. If developers added adjacent public open spaces, like plazas, to their buildings, the city granted them a bonus to build even larger floor areas. This incentive was heavily influenced by new glass box designs like the Seagram building. So instead of a tiered wedding cake, you suddenly had these sleek, monolithic towers rising straight up from wide open plazas.
But you know, this era of aggressive mid-century urban renewal definitely had a very dark side. To make way for the new, the city sometimes ruthlessly destroyed the old. In 1963, they began the demolition of the majestic Beaux-Arts masterpiece that was the original Penn Station, just to make way for the Madison Square Garden complex. Historian Lewis Mumford delivered this absolute emotional gut punch at the time, calling the destruction an act of irresponsible public vandalism. It truly was a cultural tragedy for the city.
Let's move on and see how this actually builds into something positive, though. The outrage over losing Penn Station wasn't for nothing. It directly triggered the historic preservation movement. By 1965, the New York City Landmarks Preservation Commission was enacted to protect the city's historic and cultural heritage. So, out of that tragic vandalism, over 1,000 historical structures in New York City alone have been officially saved and preserved for future generations.
Bringing us to Section 5, the Green Skyline.
As we transition into the 21st century, the challenges shaping the skyline have evolved once again. Today, architecture is fundamentally about solving modern environmental and density problems. A really perfect example of this new era is the Condé Nast building in Times Square, which was completed in 2000. It became an absolute essential test case for environmentally aware design. I mean, just listen to these features. It's got gas-fired absorption chillers, an insulating curtain wall that means the building rarely even needs traditional heating or cooling, biodegradable office furniture, and an air system delivering 50% more fresh air than the city code even requires. The skyscrapers of today aren't just racing to be the tallest anymore. They're racing to be the most sustainable, earning all sorts of certifications for green design.
And the law just continues to adapt to our current crises. Just as the 1916 laws tackled the issue of shadows, the legislation of today is tackling the modern housing density problem. In December 2024, the city signed the City of Yes legislation. This is a modern zoning update that allows for a slight increase in residential density in certain zones, and notably, it enacts a partial rollback of required parking in new developments. The laws are shifting again, directly reflecting a modern priority to maximize residential space.
Which brings us to our final thought. The skyline of New York isn't static. It really never has been. It's a living, breathing record of the city's changing needs, its technological leaps, and its legal boundaries. From the strict grids of 1811 to the setback towers of 1916 to the green glass monoliths of today, every single shape has a reason. So, as these new City of Yes zoning rules take hold, increasing density and changing the rules of the game yet again, I want to leave you with this. When you look up 10, 20, or 50 years from now, what do you think tomorrow's skyline will look like? Thank you so much for exploring the city with me today. Keep looking up and keep asking why.